Hello. I haven't had the best week, if I'm being completely honest, in terms of coding progress. I guess I could have guessed this because I always knew I was going to be away last weekend. So last week I went away on Thursday evening, didn't take my laptop with me. So my week was basically cut off then. Had a golf weekend away at the Belfry on the Friday night and then spent Saturday night at the in-laws. I did attempt to try and do a little bit of coding last night when I was watching NFL as usual on a Sunday, but unfortunately with the hangover still lingering, I was just too tired. So I managed to do a tiny bit, but overall it was a pretty slow week. Now that the disclaimer's out the way, I can tell you about the small amount of progress that I did actually make. I've only managed to do day 7 out of the 21 days. Even just from the short 7 days that I've done, I've now got a much better understanding of why we use width and max width. So the advice is to use percentages for the width and then pixels for the max width and margin auto 0 to center the content. I also learned that it's best to create a container div for your whole website basically. So before that I was just using the HTML or the body element in order to do so, and things were getting quite messy and a bit frustrating, whereas now knowing that actually creating a separate container for your whole web page, you have a lot more control over your page when starting to apply flex blocks and grid and different styles. Also have a much better understanding of M and Rem. So I guess before I was kind of just typing these numbers in and I was watching on the live server, the screen make the difference, but I didn't really understand as and when to use which one and when was appropriate. So now knowing that rems are good for font, but not necessarily, but ems aren't. And ems and rems can both be used in padding and margin from what I've seen, just dependent on the context. Within the mini course, there's little challenges that I've managed to successfully do, and then I've managed to apply it to that bento grid. So I'm starting to get a better understanding of how to apply these techniques, and as a result, the website is, funny enough, becoming a lot more responsive. Moving on to JavaScript, a bit of humble pie this week. Last week I mentioned I was working my way through that tutorial video, and the challenges and the stuff that he was making me do at the beginning were super basic. Started off this week finishing off those challenges, and one evening that took me best part of an hour. So it turns out learning, I think it was strings and maths and combining the two to get an output on the console, I mean, that was actually quite hard work in the end. I quickly learned that this is just a very, very sort of basic beginner exercise just to get familiarized yourself with the concept of JavaScript and using JavaScript, but this isn't actually how I'll be coding JavaScript. So progressing from that, I then advanced to adding the script tag within the HTML document. Now, there was a whole chapter, which I did watch some of, but skipped, that was dedicated to HTML and CSS, but this was on the basis that the learner doesn't know anything about HTML and CSS. A lot of it was like setting up your HTML file, downloading VS Code, etc., etc. Now, obviously, I spent months learning about that. So, like I said, I skipped that part. I noticed he used the inline method for creating the CSS, and I think that was just for the purpose of speed, to show other people who are following it along who aren't so familiar how to just quickly apply styles and more the concept of CSS as opposed to what you would actually do in terms of best practice. And then with JavaScript, it was exactly the same. So entering the script tag and then editing directly the JavaScript within the HTML file, which I did wonder, is this just the same thing? Do you create a separate JavaScript file as typical best practice? Which I quickly went on ChatGPT and realized it was right. But for now, I'm just gonna follow along because we are like right at the beginner basics level of this tutorial course. So I've built a super simple website. I've done a few very basic things which I can't even remember, like console.log and an alert button, and there's a few little mini challenges. I was meant to start the next chapter, which is variables, but like I said, I was a bit too tired last night. So the good news is that I've got a very quiet week ahead of me this week, and absolutely after my heavy drinking and golfing weekend last week, I've got nothing in the diary. So hoping to make some good progress on the JavaScript front this coming week. As always, thanks for watching, and please don't be scared to share any useful tips or helpful advice that could help me along this journey. Thanks.